I always considered myself a cautious person, the kind who thoroughly studies a contract before signing, who monitors all bank notifications and carefully archives every receipt. But nothing in my experience could prepare me for the moment when a message from a credit organization materialized in my email inbox. It was a standard notification, concise, devoid of any emotion. Dear client, we inform you of the upcoming payment on your housing loan in the amount of €2,500. I blinked and reread the sentence again. Housing loan. I had never taken out anything like that, not once. I rent housing, save for a down payment, and I'm absolutely sure my finances don't allow me to get into such obligations yet. I immediately decided it was a mix-up, some error in the registry, a name mistake, or a software glitch. But when I opened the banking app, my pulse froze. There was a loan hanging on my account for €420,000. I froze in my chair and could barely breathe. My ears were ringing. Blood pounded in my temples. No, this is impossible, I muttered to myself. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the files. Everything seemed completely legitimate. My name was there, my date of birth, my identification number. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a fact. A few moments later, I was already dialing the bank's number with shaking hands. An automated voice, hold music, then a specialist answered. Good day, Bank ***. How can I assist you? This must be a glitch. It has to be a glitch. The words came out with difficulty. I just saw a notification about a housing loan payment, but I've never taken out such a loan. Silence, the rustle of a keyboard in the background. Just a moment. Yes, here's your account. You do have a loan registered for real estate purchase. WHAT loan, I snapped. I didn't sign anything. The specialist types on the keys again. According to the records, the loan was approved 2 years ago. Collateral is the property at address ***. Signatures fully match yours. Signatures? My throat went dry. You mean you have documents with MY signature in your files? Exactly. If you wish, we can send you duplicates. I dropped the phone onto the table's surface. My knees buckled, everything blurred before my eyes. Someone had used my name, my information, my future. At that moment, I didn't know what to think. The first idea was identity theft. Someone copied my data and registered the loan. It happens. But when I received the files by email and saw the signatures, I was speechless. Yes, it was my signature, an almost perfect replica, but I knew it wasn't my hand. And then a thought flashed in my mind that truly chilled me. Parents, only they had access to all my personal information. Only they kept duplicates of documents, passport, ID. Only they could. I immediately pushed the thought away. No, that's absurd. They would never do that. But intuition had already outpaced reason in acknowledging the truth. I went to them that same evening. The drive took 40 minutes, but it felt like eternity. Everything inside was boiling. They greeted me as always. Mom warmly, Dad with his usual balanced expression. Son, you're so unexpected, Mom said, placing tea on the table. Did something happen? I stood in the center of the kitchen and pulled out my phone. What is this? My voice trembled. On the screen, an open file with the loan, their address, their home, my signature. They fell silent. Mom's face turned pale. Dad just clenched his jaw and looked away. Explain, I hissed. Is this a prank? The silence dragged on, too deafening. And then Dad said, we were planning to tell you. Tell me? I laughed nervously. You were planning to tell me that you hung €420,000 of debt on me. Mom buried her face in her hands. We had no choice. No choice? I slammed my fist on the table and the cup of drink tipped over. You took my future, my name, my life, and just used it like a bank card. They started talking at once, overlapping each other. We were in a desperate situation. Lenders rejected us. You know how hard it is to cover fees and medical bills. We thought we'd pay it off ourselves later. I listened and felt something cracking inside. These weren't strangers scamming me. These were my parents, the ones who were supposed to protect me. And now they had broken my life. I stood up. Do you realize what you've done? I'm now trapped with creditors for years. No loans, no own home, no prospects, all thanks to you. Dad tried to maintain composure. Son, this is for the family, for all of us. For the family, I smirked bitterly. Family is trust in each other, and you stole my fate. I turned and left, leaving them in the kitchen silence. In the car, I sat motionless for a long time. My palms trembled, my chest burned. I recalled childhood, how Dad taught me to ride a bike, how Mom ironed my school shirts. All those tender memories turned to ashes in an instant. How did they dare? And here I realized this was just the beginning. Because 420,000 euros isn't just a mistake. It's a verdict, and I would have to find a way out even if it completely shatters the family. I thought that after leaving my parents that night, things would calm down a bit, that the anger would subside and we could settle it peacefully. I was wrong. In the morning, the bank sent a second notification. Now about the payment delay and a threat. If funds are not transferred within 10 days, we will initiate the foreclosure process on the collateral property. The word foreclosure echoed like a sentence. I contacted a lawyer recommended by colleagues, a woman named Emma with an impeccable reputation. She gave me 10 minutes to tell my story, then requested all the documents. Her tone on the phone was even, but it carried a steely professionalism. Martin, first, duplicates of all materials. Second, avoid contact with your parents until I review the case. Third, if we find signs of forgery, we'll file a fraud case. I scanned and sent them. While waiting for Emma's response, I sat on pins and needles. She described what I had already seen: the loan, the house on Lindenstrasse, the signature, the IDs. But she added a couple of notes that pierced my soul like ice. The documents are legally sound, but that doesn't imply your guilt. People sometimes sign without realizing the essence. We'll figure it out. And also, if the creditors have your promissory note, don't panic. There are ways to challenge the transaction on grounds of abuse of trust or deception. Can you speed it up? I asked, feeling a tremor in my voice. I'll try, but listen. Until a formal claim is filed, creditors will insist, collectors will call. Be prepared. The collectors called that same day. A male voice on the line sounded with measured sternness. Mr. Berg, this is the collections department. Your payment is overdue. If payment is not received within 7 days, we will initiate the forced alienation process. I hung up and suddenly noticed. My phone screen was lit up with unread notifications. Chats from colleagues, bank alerts, texts from Mom, "Can we talk?" And from Dad, "Let's discuss tonight, son." I didn't want to talk. I went to work, sat at my desk, and after half an hour realized concentration was impossible. Code, deadlines, reports, everything lost meaning. Emma's words, "Don't contact your parents," echoed like a ban on self-restraint that I didn't want to follow, but I heeded her advice. That evening, finishing a report well past midnight, my phone vibrated again. On the screen, Mom's name. I stared at it and turned off the sound. Emma and I met in her office the next day. She laid out a dossier with copies, diagrams, notes on the table. She had a clear plan. First, the credit organization. File a formal complaint for fraud. Second, law enforcement, a statement on signature forgery and abuse of trust. Third, request to authorities who and when accessed your data. Fourth, if the parent's involvement is confirmed, we'll have to prepare for a court case with elements of family conflict. I listened silently. If the parent's involvement is confirmed, 3 words I didn't want to utter then, but they hung in the air like a sentence. While Emma spoke, my phone was silent. That was the first positive aspect in recent days. I thought, finally, real action would begin, but the uplift was short-lived. 3 days later, the first responses from the bank arrived. They sent annotated copies. I studied them like a detective novel. The signature was there, stamps were in place, notary marks, everything in order. But at the bottom of one page, in fine print, there was a footnote. Powers granted based on power of attorney number. I reread it and froze. Power of attorney in my name, signed by Mom. I called Emma, and for the first time, weariness showed in her tone. "That's a clever trick," she noted. "Many use powers of attorney for re-registration. It doesn't mean your consent, but it's a legal maneuver. We need to find out when this power of attorney was signed and under what circumstances." I realized one thing. My parents weren't just initiators of the operation. They had preemptively created a legal foundation, laid the groundwork that gave everything the appearance of legality. And they did it without my involvement. Rage flared up so much that I almost physically felt its heat. I gave Emma access to my parents' email exchanges. Yes, they had links to my email, that's a separate story, and she found another suspicious message, correspondence between Mom and a real estate agent. In it, politely and coldly, Mom asks to speed up the process, specifically on the son, because it's easier to pass with the son's credit history and then we'll transfer the property to him. What appeared on the screen could only be called premeditated. The parents knew they were using me as a tool and prepared escape routes. I went to them, the door swung open almost without knocking. Mom stood in the hallway as if waiting. Dad was seated in an armchair and his face had the same expression as that night, a mix of remorse and stubbornness. "Martin," Mom said, "let's talk." "Let's talk," I replied in an icy tone. "You wrote to the broker on the son, right? You knew what you were doing." She hesitated, then nodded. "We were thinking about the family's future," she replied. "We thought it would be easier this way. We wanted to save the home." "Save?" I laughed bitterly as usual. "You saved the home and pawned my prospects for a loan. I can't get a loan now, I'm chained to your obligation. How did you even imagine this, save the home if you're leaving me in debt?" Dad stood up and said unexpectedly quietly, "We didn't mean to harm you. We believed we could handle it, but the obligations, they piled up, and the creditors were pressing." "Why didn't you ask my opinion? Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked from pain. "And how would you have reacted?" Dad retorted hotly. "You would have refused and left us homeless. We couldn't do that." It was a classic tactic, shift the conversation to guilt. They spoke in the voices of those parents who had instilled for years, "We did this for you." But now it sounded like a reproach. "If you're against it, then you're a traitor." This pressure tactic didn't work immediately, but it began to erode my nerves. They evoked in me a sense of guilt that I diligently suppressed. My role as a son, duty to elders, all this interfered with clear thinking. Meanwhile, the collector calls didn't stop. At work, colleagues started noticing my distraction. The boss called me in for a talk, and I barely explained that I needed a few days to resolve family issues. The girl I'd been seeing for half a year texted, "I'm not ready for this level of chaos. Maybe you should sort it out before we continue." That was the second blow. Pressure from all sides was working. Creditors, parents, relationships, work. Everything was starting to squeeze me like pliers. And then an unexpected turn happened. I was sitting in my apartment at night, scrolling through correspondence, and came across a message from the broker with an attachment, an audio file of negotiations. I played it, thinking it was another legal junk, and suddenly heard a familiar voice, Dad's voice, balanced but insistent. "We want to register everything on the son because he's younger and has a solid credit history. He'll return the property to us in a couple of years when he settles down. This is a temporary step," Dad explained on the recording. I listened several times. The recording also had Mom's line, "If needed, I'll sign the power of attorney. The main thing is for the creditors to approve the application." This recording evidence of intent, but it was also a blade aimed straight at the heart of my family, because with it, the question was settled. This wasn't identity theft by strangers, not deception by outsiders. This was deliberate use of me in a family scheme. I delivered a copy of the recording to Emma. She watched it without looking away. "This is key material," she noted. "With it, we can demonstrate the intent and motives of third parties. This helps. But we need to maneuver carefully. A public conflict is a path that will shatter family ties. Are you ready to see it through?" I looked at her and thought that I was ready not just to see it through, I had to. Because if I backed down, they would cease to be parents in my eyes. Yes, it was a rupture and it was painful, but the choice was no longer made by reason alone. It was made by the soul. That evening, I returned to the apartment and saw an envelope on the table. In the message was a simple note from Mom. "Think before you break everything. You're our son. The home is for all of us. We counted on you." I put the envelope in a drawer and for the first time in many days fell asleep without worry. In the morning, I woke up feeling like I was entering a battle. It was a battle for my independence against those who should have protected me. But I no longer felt regret. I felt resolve. Emma insisted. In the morning, we went to the bank together. I expected a cold corridor and indifferent employees, but it was worse. It was a hall where existence was divided into numbers and obligations. The loan specialist, a man with a perfect hairstyle and monotonous tone, flipped through my dossier like a store catalog. Mr. Berg, everything is properly documented with us. Signatures are present, power of attorney is present, the loan is active. You are the debtor, your obligation is to make payments. But the power of attorney was signed without my knowledge. I restrained myself, though rage boiled inside. I have audio where my parents discuss using my credit history. This is direct manipulation. The specialist looked up, as if seeing me as a person for the first time, not a statistic. If you have such evidence, you can contact law enforcement. But until a court decision, for us, you are the sole payer. Emma calmly leaned forward. We've already filed a statement. You'll receive notification. I recommend freezing penalty fees and interest until the proceedings, otherwise the bank will find itself in the position of an accomplice. The specialist almost choked, but held back a smirk. We'll await official documents. We left the bank, and for the first time I realized the weight of reality. Yes, the process is started, but it's a long distance, not a sprint. A couple of days later, the parents called themselves. First, Mom. Martin, why are you dragging us to court? This is family. We can settle it internally. You'll ruin us. You already ruined it, Mom, when you decided for me. Do you think you'll have a new family? Her tone broke. People come and go, but parents are always there. You'll lose us and strangers won't become close. I wanted to shout, but just replied. Close ones don't sign €500,000 of debt behind their son's back. After that, Dad sent a concise text. Be ready for the consequences. Emma noted that this was already a serious level of pressure. They had started preparing a defense. A week later, a local press reporter called me. Mr. Berg, we have information that you've initiated proceedings against your own parents. Would you like to comment? I froze. Who leaked it? Emma suggested. It was the parents or their defenders doing to portray me as an ungrateful offspring. That same day, a post appeared on social media. Young IT specialist from Berlin betrayed his parents by suing because they registered a loan in his name to save the home. Under the post, hundreds of comments. Some condemned the parents, but most blamed me. Egoist, traitor, shame on the son. I read those phrases and felt something collapsing inside. I didn't want war, I just wanted the truth. In the evening, there was a knock at the door. On the threshold stood a man about 40 in an elegant coat. He introduced himself. Peter Schmidt, investor. The property on Lindenstrasse that your parents registered through the loan interests me. We had a preliminary conversation with them. If it comes to seizure, I'm first in line. What? I stared at him, unbelieving. They were already planning to sell the home. Oh, Mr. Berg, he smirked slightly. Your family has been in obligations for a long time. This property is collateral, and your parents aren't the only ones playing such games. He handed me a card and added, Think about it. Sometimes it's better to let go of the property than fight for it. I slammed the door, but his words stuck in my head. Late at night, I listened again to the audio of my parents' conversation with the broker. Dad's words, "This is temporary," now sounded cynical. At that moment, I realized, this story is no longer just about the home and money. It's a story about choice, save what's rotten inside or break free from it forever. I wrote to Emma, see it through, even if I have to lose them. She responded with one word, prepare. And at that moment, I understood that ahead was a battle, a real one. The first hearing was scheduled for early October. I didn't sleep a wink the night before. My heart pounded as if I were running a marathon. It seemed every breath required effort. Emma met me at the courthouse. Dark suit, strict gaze, dossier with papers like an arsenal. Ready? She asked, and I nodded, though I didn't feel ready. We entered the hall. The judge, a gray-haired woman with icy eyes, was already at the bench. The clerk announced the case. Martin Berg versus Hans and Anna Berg. Charges: fraud with housing loan, use of personal data without permission. My parents sat opposite. Mom in a strict outfit with a feigned, sorrowful expression. Dad serious, but in his gaze I caught something new, a mix of defiance and fear. The judge asked, Mr. Berg, do you confirm that your parents registered a housing loan in your name for €420,000 without your consent? Yes, Your Honor, I replied, and my voice came out louder than expected. I have an audio recording of the conversation where they discuss it. Mom threw up her hands. Your Honor, we're not fraudsters. We're parents who wanted to save the home. Our son was aware of our choice. He's just angry now because outsiders incited him." She looked my way with such dramatic anguish that part of the audience whispered. Dad added, "Martin has always been vulnerable, easily influenced. His girlfriend, this." Defender turned him against the family. Emma calmly stood up. "Your Honor, we have evidence. Audio recording. Bank statements showing the power of attorney was signed not by the plaintiff, and crucially, we have an expert opinion on signature forgery." The judge nodded. "The evidence will be attached." After a pause, the parent's defender spoke. A young, confident individual in an expensive suit. He spoke as if we had already lost. "Respected court, my clients were in a difficult situation. Their home was threatened with seizure. They turned to their son, but he refused help. In desperation, they used a power of attorney that he signed 2 years ago." The defender paused. "Yes, perhaps not fully realizing the consequences, but now he's suing not because of the money, but because of personal grudges." Whispers rose in the hall again. It all looked like I was the ungrateful offspring who portrayed his parents as criminals. The judge frowned. "Mr. Berg Jr., did you really have a power of attorney?" I stood. "Yes, but it was limited to everyday matters, paying bills, small expenses, no loans." Emma added, "Moreover, that power of attorney expired last year, and the signature on the new one is forged. The expertise confirmed it." The judge nodded, but I saw she wasn't ready for a verdict yet. And then the parents played their trump card. Mom stood up, her tone trembling. "Your Honor, my son has long distanced himself from us. He doesn't respect his parents. He said we're a burden to him. I have correspondence where he writes to friends that parents are dragging him down." And they submitted printouts of my old texts to the court. Yes, I had once sent that to a friend in a fit of anger, but seeing it here, taken out of context, was like a knife strike. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Berg, do you confirm these are your words?" I swallowed. "Yes, but it doesn't relate to the case. I was angry, but anger isn't consent to $500,000 in debt." Mom sobbed so that even the bailiff gave her a sympathetic look. When it seemed the tension had peaked, Emma requested the floor. "Your Honor, we wish to call a witness." The door opened and into the hall stepped Peter Schmidt, the same investor who visited me. I almost cursed. "Identify yourself," the judge said. "Peter Schmidt, real estate investor. I spoke with Hans and Anna Berg about acquiring their home. And yes, they admitted to me that the loan was registered on their son without his knowledge. I'm ready to confirm their words under oath." A murmur rose in the hall. My parents paled. Dad jumped up. "You're lying, you bastard. We didn't say that." The judge sharply banged the gavel. Silence in the court. And I sat thinking, why is Schmidt helping me? What's his interest in this? Emma quietly leaned toward me. "Don't trust him completely. He has his own goals, but right now he's with us." The judge summed up. "The case is complicated. There are conflicting testimonies, but the facts of document forgery require detailed examination. Next hearing in 3 weeks." I left the hall exhausted. My parents didn't even glance my way. And Schmidt caught up with me at the exit. "We'll meet again, Martin, and believe me, this story is just the beginning." He smiled in a way that sent a chill down my spine. The following days turned into hell. Local media smelled the scandal of the century and started calling me every 10 minutes. Cameras at my home, articles with headlines like, "Son versus Parents, 420k euro loan scandal, fraud or misunderstanding." I felt like a character in a black comedy where the whole world looks at you with reproach. Even friends started keeping their distance. Some feared getting involved, others just didn't understand how it was possible. Emma was always by my side. "Ignore it, Martin. The main thing is the court. Everything else is background." But the background pressed. My phone buzzed constantly. Social media filled with comments. "Ungrateful offspring. Parents are victims. Shame." I wanted to rip out that phone and throw it in the river. When we appeared at the next court hearing, the hall was packed with reporters. Parents sat with stone faces, and their defender again tried to build a theory of innocence. "Your Honor," he began, "we believe that the publicity of these events undermines the family's prestige and affects the parents' mental state." The judge interrupted him. That's not your concern. We're examining facts. And then an unexpected witness appeared. A neighbor who claimed he saw Martin's father personally signing papers at the bank, allegedly explaining to his son that it was necessary for saving the home. He didn't say it loudly, the neighbor said, but I heard. I can confirm that Martin didn't give consent. The hall buzzed again. I felt a strange mix of relief and horror. The testimony protected me, but the publicity grew every minute. After the court, Schmidt invited me for coffee. I didn't know what to expect. Martin, he began calmly, I'm not just an investor. I know a lot about your parents. They tried to manipulate you using your trust. I want to help you, but there's a catch. What catch? I asked, feeling my pulse quicken. The home in question is valued higher than $420,000. If we win, there's a chance to use its value to pay off all obligations. But it's a risk. They might file a counterclaim for defamation. I looked at him. This individual, on one hand, was an ally. On the other, his interests didn't fully align with mine. So you're playing a game with us, but why are you helping me at all? I asked. He smiled. Because it's exciting, and because I'm convinced that truth must prevail, even if it's painful. Meanwhile, the parents started acting more cunningly. They tried to intimidate me, threatening legal measures against the defender, relatives, friends. Every day, letters from their lawyers arrived with accusations. Breach of trust, unfounded accusation, public humiliation of the family. Mom even approached me once in a store. Martin, think about your conscience. You're destroying the family. I barely held back my rage. Conscience stayed with you when you signed someone else's loan on me without notice. She froze, panic flashed in her eyes. 2 weeks after the loud hearing, something unexpected happened. The bank sent a notice of urgent review of the loan agreement. Specialists confirmed the signature is fake, documents fabricated. The judge, seeing this, finally frowned seriously. I see the case is gaining momentum. Now I need to analyze all the evidence, after which we'll announce the verdict. I felt a strange relief, but anxiety remained. Every minute seemed like eternity. Schmidt approached me again after the hearing. Martin, soon it will be clear who was honest and who tried to deceive you. But remember, this is just the beginning. They won't give up without a fight. And I realized that the next battle would be even tougher. Public opinion against me, parents against me, the legal system against me. And even allies might not be who they seem. I never imagined that life could turn into a nightmare where every step is a trap. After the experts' recognition of the fake signature, the parents started acting even more aggressively. Their cold persistence was felt even in messages and calls. But soon I understood that this was no longer just a legal game. It was a personal war. One evening, returning to the apartment, I found a package on the doorstep. Inside, photos of me and Schmidt taken on the street. On the back was a short note. Next time will be worse. Think about your safety. My pulse froze. This wasn't an empty threat. It was a warning. I knew the parents couldn't have done this themselves. Too risky. Someone was watching me. I called Schmidt. Someone's following me. Photos. Excellent, he replied. That means we're on the right track. They're scared. But be vigilant, Martin. One wrong move and they might cross the line. At the next court hearing, the parents presented a new defender, famous, assertive, who tried to turn everything upside down. He declared, "These claims are fabricated. The son's signature was voluntary. Moreover, the parents' actions were for preserving family property." The judge frowned, and I felt the tension in the hall reach its peak. I knew that simple evidence wasn't enough now. Schmidt and I met after the court. "Martin," he said, "they're setting a trap. We need a move that will crush them for good." I nodded. Inside, there was a sense of danger, but also resolve. The next day, an old family acquaintance called me, who never interfered in their affairs. His tone trembled. "Martin, listen to me. I know what the parents are up to. They've prepared papers to shift even more obligations onto you. But there's a copy of recordings of their negotiations with the bank. I can pass it to you." When I received the recordings, I realized this was the turning point. Every step of theirs recorded, every lie documented. "We'll win," I said to Schmidt. "We just need to act smartly." That night, returning to the apartment, I noticed a car following me. The headlights blinded, and I understood it wasn't a coincidence. My pulse pounded so hard it seemed it would burst out. "Schmidt, they're tailing me," I reported. "Don't stop," he replied calmly. "We need to expose them." Every turn, every signal, it was a game of survival. I couldn't go to the police. They might be fake. I felt like a hero in a spy saga where every minute decides everything. A few days later, an unexpected meeting occurred. The parents showed up at my office without warning. Their faces were calm, but their eyes shone with cold. "Martin," Mom said, "let's talk like family." "Family?" I asked, clenching my fists. "Family signs a loan in a child's name without their knowledge." Dad tried to interject, but I stopped him with a gesture. "Enough, everything you've done now has consequences, and I'll show it to the whole world if necessary." At that moment I realized the game had changed forever. I was no longer just a victim, I was an active participant, and now everything depended on how bold my steps would be. With Schmidt's help and the acquaintances' evidence, I prepared a full set of materials for the court. They included conversation recordings, financial reports, and proof of forgery. Martin, Schmidt said, "We're ready tomorrow, all or nothing." And I realized there would be no turning back tomorrow. Tomorrow would decide who wins, the parents' lies and cunning or truth and justice. I never imagined that one morning could decide my entire fate. I woke up with a heavy soul, but with a clear thought. Today I'm not just an offspring, I'm an individual ready to fight for my truth. The court was overcrowded. Parents sat in the front row, looking at me coldly. Their defender had already prepared a strategy, and I felt that every glance of his was aimed at breaking me morally. The judge began the proceedings, and first thing, I handed her the materials, conversation recordings, and proof of signature forgery. "Martin," Schmidt whispered, "now they'll press, don't falter." I nodded. Inside, everything trembled, but outwardly I held steady. The parent's defender launched the attack. "Your Honor, my client claims that the signing of papers was voluntary," he stated with cold confidence. "Everything was done for preserving family property." I saw the parents trying to maintain calm, but anxiety flashed in their eyes. "Your Honor," I began, "I never signed those papers. None of my actions gave them the right to create a loan in my name, and here's the evidence." I presented the recordings, bank materials, and the judge studied them carefully. And then the parent's defender lost the thread. On the screen appeared an unexpected video recording from the bank's security cameras. It showed Dad personally signing the papers with Mom watching. I was stunned. They had proven their own guilt. "Martin," Schmidt whispered, "this is the moment of truth." My pulse pounded, adrenaline surged through my veins. The whole hall froze, the parents were in shock. After a pause, the parents tried to approach me. "Martin, we did this for you," Mom exclaimed. "For me," I echoed, clenching my fists. "You did this to break me, to use my name for your own gain." Dad tried to intervene, but I stopped him with a look. "Enough excuses. Everything you've done has consequences. Today it will all become public." The judge announced the verdict. The loan is annulled. Parents are obligated to compensate moral damages and cover defender costs. Sighs of relief echoed in the hall. I felt the burden fall from my shoulders. "Martin," Schmidt said, "you did it, you won." I smiled through tears. The victory was not only legal but ethical. After the court, I stepped outside. The sun shone brightly, but in my soul was a warm light of understanding. Truth always triumphs if you fight for it. I met with friends and Schmidt, and we celebrated a modest victory. But the main thing, I realized that I would never allow anyone to use me or my name for their own gain. My fate changed forever. I'm no longer the offspring who can be deceived. I'm an individual who took control of his life. And let the parents no longer believe they can manipulate me. I gained freedom. Freedom to live honestly, decide independently, and protect those I value.